And I'm actually going to get right into it. And you really want to know how. How can I blaze my own path? How can I be successful? How can I follow the path that someone else has laid for me to be successful?
What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 227 of Campus Cuts. Today, I have a very special guest. I have a world-renowned speaker and a best-selling author, an entrepreneur, a motivational speaker. Just somebody that's an enigma and a champion of the lights. Somebody that has inspired literally millions of people, being literally next to Kanye West himself and other people too. Just the way that he is able to utilize his gift and his blessing that God has given him. I just want to introduce you guys to none other than Kyle Dendy. Welcome to the show, man.
Man, I feel like this is a long time coming. I'm excited to be here, and I'm excited to see where our conversations go.
Yeah, dude. No, this is like a long time coming, man. Like, I remember the very first time that your sister mentioned you to me, and I was like, oh, dude, like, that's so cool. Like, I would like to meet this guy one day. And then I remember seeing you on the Shade Room, and after that, I was like, what? The Shade Room? And then all of a sudden, I'll like see you at Sunday service out in California. I'm like, wait, huh? And then from that to being on Joe, like, wait, huh? Yo, and then popping up everywhere. Like, I was actually just have another guest coming up after you. His name is Knowledge. He knows about you. He's a huge influencer, speaker, coach, and YouTuber as well, creator. And he's like, oh, I know that name. I know Kyle. Like, the Instagram guy? He's like, yes. And wow, small world. And dude, but yeah, you're everywhere.
Bro, I promise it is a small world. I was talking to somebody just a couple of days ago on a Zoom call that we're going to potentially be working together. And then, I'd never met this person before. And the person they were on a call with next was somebody who I know like super well. So like a super small world. And yeah, man, I think God brings people together for a reason, and really can do a lot for people, help people with it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So before going ahead, diving into the show, man, of course, you are an entrepreneur, but you're also like 22. So just give people a rundown of your name. Well, I guess like what's your occupation? What you consider your occupation since you wear a lot of hats? What college that you graduated with, and your hometown.
Yeah, so my name is Kyle Dendy. I'm 22 years old from Dallas, Texas. I was born and raised in Dallas, and after high school, I left and moved out to the Los Angeles area for college at a school in Orange County called Biola University. Really enjoyed my time out there. Toward the end of my time, I switched to an online program, but still did finish living out there. When it comes to my occupation, it's funny because people ask me, and like I struggle to answer because there's truly not one thing. And what I love about that the most, and I'll touch on what those many things are, but is that's how I wanted it to be. Like when you asked me when I was 10 years old what I wanted to be when I grew up, I would have either told you I wanted to be an entrepreneur, or I would have told you I want to do this and I want to do this and this and this and this. So man, a few things that I do. I'm a speaker. I'm an author. I also have a speaking program to help other people become speakers. I have a writing program to help people become authors. We just started a PR wing to my company, Dendy Ventures. So now we're offering PR services in addition to, we help people with Instagram growth, content creator, honestly, just entrepreneur following Christ, man. And what I love about that, and especially in the digital age that we live in, is that the turnaround time from download to getting it into the world can be so quick. Right. You can have an idea, a concept, and at least get it out to try, even if it doesn't work. And I'm sure we'll touch on this, but I would encourage anybody who feels like they don't want to try yet because they don't think something is going to work. It's like, it's probably not. The first time you try something, it's probably not, but it is going to lead to the next thing. The things that don't work are going to lead to the things that are. And it's like just Legos. You build on top of every failure and every success. And, that will lead you to where you are. It has led you to where you are now, and it will lead you to where you're going to be in the future.
Right. That's really good. And that's so good, man. And, I remember listening to your other podcast and knowing knowing your story. Like I really did attract this. I'm like, I'm going to talk to this guy one day, and I'm
Yeah.
actually going to talk. I'm going to know like this guy. And boom, we're here now. And that's just so awesome. I really think that's incredible. But I just want to let you know that I learned so much from you. I did your speakers program. I was able to have that consulting call from you, and just like the way that you move, and you don't like, how most people, whenever they are in a position of influence nowadays, they have a tendency to move kind of like with an ego. But with you, you don't do that at all. Where does that come from? And like, how did that really start?
Man, I think from the time I was young, I'm driven by my faith in Christ. Like that is my number one most important thing. I think if I wasn't a Christian, and I am, apart from that, I was already raised from a young age to treat people with respect, to carry yourself in like a humble way. And I think being a follower of Christ like makes that even stronger. But I think also, I'm self-aware enough to realize that however far somebody looks at what I'm doing and says I am, there's people who are a lot farther.
Right.
And there's people who are doing more, whether they're younger or older. And that's not to say I should compare myself to them and what they're doing. It's just to say that there's always a bigger fish in the pond. And so there's no sense in trying to, get a big head about it. And also, something that I think I do well, some people may consider it a strength, some not a strength, is I'm very I can lock in, like this shelter in place stuff. I can lock in, stay in my house, and just work, lock in, not hear from anybody or anybody hear from me. But I think a lot of times, a lot of people can take that and be like, yo, why is Kyle not connecting? Why is he not doing this or that? But at the same time, I'm zoning in on what I'm doing. I've got these blinders up to what I'm focusing on and what God has put in front of me right now, to where if you're like, oh, Kyle, like you're doing more than this guy or less than that guy, like it's like I'm not even thinking about that. But I am just trying to really zone in my lane and like dominate that. And then the results of that, let them be what they may. But I'm more focused on the process than the result.
I mean, that's what, and it's so funny because that's such a cliche thing, or it sounds so cliche. You got people from Gary Vee, from Julian Mitchell, to LeBron James, Lance Armstrong, all that, like, trust the process, trust the process, trust the process. Why do you think it's important for people, whether they're an entrepreneur or not, to be able to have that understanding, that mindset, I'm going to trust the process?
It's important because the stuff that you want to take, there's a saying that says people overestimate what they can do in 5 months and they underestimate what they can do in 5 years. And the process is important because whatever you want, if it's big enough or worthwhile enough, it's not going to come easy and it's not going to come fast. So let's say, for example, that a part of my calling and purpose is speaking. Yes, I've had the chance to speak on stages in front of 15,000 people. I've had a chance to do big things in that space. But when I first gave my first talk ever, it was only about the big stage one day, that would have meant the 4 or 5 years would have sucked of the process. And it also means I probably would have quit during that process and never got to the big things that God had for me. Whereas because I loved the speaking gigs where I was traveling and speaking to 6 people or 7 people or 20 people, or the times where I had to hustle and put on my own events, and sometimes a lot of people showed up and sometimes nobody showed up, but what I loved was actually putting something on and owning something for myself. Because I loved that, I always say this destiny will catch you in consistency. Because I was consistent in all those things, I was in a position at the right time, the right place. I call it the grace of God, and I believe that's exactly what it was, for those big opportunities to come. But if you even try to fake the fact that you're about the process and but it's really not in a person's heart, it's going to be revealed by their inability to get past the process that leads to the promise. They'll quit every time. And so it's something that you can't, everybody can quote it and put it on their story and share it like that, but you can't fake it. You can fake it for a day, a month, maybe even a year, but you're not going to fake loving the process for 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, some big things have happened in my life. I believe bigger things are going to happen. But what if it didn't happen? What if I didn't speak with Kanye West? What if I didn't speak in front of a lot of people? What if I was still in the just doing tiny, tiny things? Would I still want to do what I'm doing? And for me, the answer is yes.
Yeah.
And if it's not, though, I would have quit way, way, way back and would have never gotten to some of the bigger things I've had the chance to do. And that goes for anything.
Right. That's good. And then like, but like, see, and the thing is with like with any entrepreneur person, like they have a streak of competitiveness. Like they want to be not competitive against other people, but like you know how you say like you zone in, you have that Mamba mentality and that athlete mentality. And I remember like you used to be an athlete. Like talk about that story of like how you were able to like something happened to you, and then after that, like how you were able to transmute that mentality into what you're doing now.
Yeah, I mean that's a really I'm glad you brought that up because like I'm a competitor and you know there's probably times where I do find myself competing with others. I'm not saying that's perfect, but like if somebody's gonna hop into my arena side by side with me and we are in the competition as far as business to business, person to person, whatever, like this is the best way to put it. It's not personal. But if we're gonna go ahead, yeah, it's not like
Not.
it's not because I don't like you, it's not because whatever, but if we're gonna go head to head, I'm not just going to roll over. No, there's a thrill to it. It's so, I think there's even a healthy competition
Right.
in sports and in life to where, you know, my wife and I, we've been doing a marathon of the Fast and Furious movies.
Right.
And in the Fast and Furious movies, they have all of these, they'll do these races where they have the cars. And a lot of times it's like friend and friend having like this intense race, but like laughing while they're doing it and having fun. And that's one of the ways that I look at what I'm doing. I think a lot of that competition did come from a young age playing sports and wanting to be great at whatever I did. And I think there's like a biblical connotation to that as well of like excellence, not even trying to be better than the next person, but like if I'm going to step foot in something, I don't want to be sloppy at it. I want to be excellent at it. And so when I did sports, I tried to be the best cornerback on defense that I could possibly be. Unfortunately, I had a couple surgeries in 2014. I had an ankle and a knee surgery, and that took away sports for me. But while recovering from that second surgery, I said, I'm okay. I have all this inspiration inside of me. I am a motivational speaker and I am an author. I didn't have a book yet. I didn't have a speaking gig, but I said, I am these things.
Right.
And laying in bed, recovering from surgery, I wrote my first book and I started reaching out to places that I could potentially speak. And I landed my first speaking gig. And I think a lot of people like, you need to take on that I am. The Bible says that God calls those things which are not as though they already are. Right. And you need to start doing that about your life. If you're not there yet, that's okay. But start speaking I am over your life about where you're trying to go, because it's interesting. The mind, the way that it works, it has a very hard time. And there's people who could break this down even more psychologically than I can. But the mind has a very hard time telling the difference between real realities and imagined realities.
Right.
So if you go play in your mind about, oh my gosh, this person hates me, they're so mad at me, that can like torment your mind. But in the same way, if you program your mind to believe that you are a success, to believe that you have the business that you want to have, and it's not some woo-woo, you know, like attraction type stuff. I'm talking about training your mind to then act on the belief that you have. Because the Bible says faith without works is dead. So if you have faith that you are a motivational speaker, you are an author, you are going to have all these things, your works and your actions will naturally follow. But if you have faith, which works in the opposite as well, that I am not these things, I can't be successful, your actions are going to take steps that lead to that result.
Right. And that's definitely very true, because I come from a neuroscience background. I'm not sure if you, I think you would, but do you know Dr. Joe Dispenza?
I don't know.
Oh, okay. So he's a neuroscientist, but he talks about epigenetics. And so the science of epigenetics is basically the rewiring of your mind and your brain and how that it can actually heal itself. And so it's in the sense of like what the narrative that we tell ourselves with our wrapping in our subconscious mind is what's going to happen. So if we continue saying, I'm sick, you're eventually going to become sick because your body is going to like as you said, it's not able to really truly understand the different reality. And that you are right, because even when God was talking to Moses, he's like, "Who are you, Lord?" He's like, "I am who I said I am." Like, and the words "I am." I was watching this Transformation Church sermon by Charles McLeaf, and when he said like, whenever you say "I am," that's God said, like God is giving his ear like, "Oh." And when you say "I am stupid," he's like, "My child thinks this." Or I'm saying "I am worthy," "I am a child of God," I'm a child of the King. Then he's like, "God, yes." Because remember, like even in James, it says that our tongue is so powerful.
Yeah.
Super scary.
Yeah. It your tongue to like a rotor of a ship that the pilot can make this massive ship go wherever it wants it to go. It talks about your tongue is like small bits that go in the mouths of horses. And this massive horse, you can control wherever you want that horse to go. And your words, like there's a story in the Bible of Jesus where he goes to a tree and the tree's not producing fruit, and he curses the tree and he says, "You'll never produce fruit again." And it literally withered right there. It withered and died. And the disciples, when they walked by, they noticed, yo, that's the tree that Jesus spoke to. And your words have the ability to like lock things in, and it works in the positive and the negative. And you have to start training. If you want to control the direction that your life is going to go to some extent or another, you have to start, like the scripture says in James, like a ship, steer where you want it to go and start speaking where you want it to go.
That's good. That's good. So now, with that idea of mindset, when did you was it after the injury that really caused that was like, okay, I'm going to change my mind? Or did you ever like have struggles or doubts about like your mindset, even before you became a speaker, and then do you still struggle with that even after?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always, we all have insecurities and things that we battle and struggle with, and of course we want to work through them. But I think also a big part of mindset is environment, or at least in an environment where people are encouraging you and telling you the positive things about you and what you can be and do. It's at least easier to believe those things. Whereas if you're battling against people around you who are always telling you you'll never be this, never be that, you still can get past those things, but you're having to work harder to do so. I was very blessed to have a lot of people around me who called out the best in me, the future in me. And I think I took those things on and believed them, because as far back as I can remember, I was going to be a success. Like I from my shoe shining business in second grade, where I had my suit and I would go there wasn't a doubt in my mind that whatever I did, I was going to be successful at it. And yes, I've had doubts and I've had times where I was like, dang, am I on the right path? But in the bigger picture of things, like I'm very confident in who God has created me to be. And I know for a fact that when I step outside of that and I try to, step outside of my gift and my abilities and what I feel is the will of God on my life, yes, it gets more shaky. But right now, especially, I feel like I'm so in my lane that like it's scary powerful what can happen when you're there.
Right.
You don't have to, even if people are running beside you trying to compete, they can't compete at being you. And they'll always be one step behind trying to copy and duplicate. And so I feel so in tune with what I'm supposed to be doing right now that, yeah, I don't feel like the need to announce everything, talk about everything, just action, and just continue to see things just flourish. And when they don't, my mind is in a place to where like I had a business that was going so incredibly well, then COVID happened and I had to shut it down. But I didn't like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do with my life? I started from scratch, rebuilt, because that's what I do. I'm an entrepreneur, and that's the way that I'm wired. But I think a lot of that does come back to self-worth and value and believing that God's hand is on your life. And I truly believe that.
Yeah, and that's good. And I was actually listening to an episode with T.I. and Damon John on T.I.'s podcast. And Damon John was talking about like the ability to pivot. Because remember, like with this, I think it's just a very important skill to have in life, is to be able to have that, yes, that mental fortitude, but also that adaptability. because I think especially during this COVID-19, it just showed that each and every structure that we thought was so comfortable for us is not as comfortable, like, and it exposed so much. So my question for you is like, what are some of the things that you've noticed, how you've grown in the during the COVID-19 crisis, and some of the things that, like, hey, some needs that need to be fulfilled that you can be able to place your value in.
Yeah, so you said it really well that in addition to mental fortitude, it's really important to have adaptability. I feel that, so one of the business that I was referring to specifically was Speaker Secrets, and you know exactly what that is.
Right.
It's my speaking course, but the nature of it is like, a lot of speaking gigs are in person. In addition to that, I have this speaking deal where I was getting paid to travel around and speak, and we had so much stuff lined up. And then all this stuff that I was like putting my time into and also had gotten comfortable in. My ads for my business were working. My business was working on autopilot. I was at my wedding in March, and my business was just ticking on autopilot, just sales coming in, results coming in, all this stuff. When COVID happened, like everything that I had built and gotten comfortable with was wiped.
Right.
And that adaptability, like you have to adapt. Like, I want to be careful how I word this, but I think, in those hard times when something falls to the ground, you got to rebuild. Yes, you've got to look to the Lord and you've got to trust him. But if you just sit on your butt and you do nothing, nothing is going to change. And especially as an adult, like, for lack of better words, nobody's coming.
Right.
I had just gotten married. Like,
Right.
Nobody's coming to, pay the bill because, oh, my little online business isn't working right now. That's not happening. And so, I think the faith in God in that situation is not, oh my gosh, I'm going to sit here and complain and I don't know what's going to happen. God, please just take my inaction and do something. The Bible says without faith, which again is attached to action, it is impossible to please God. So what I did was I built from scratch, and I spent a lot of money that I didn't have to spend trying things and testing things and working things out. But now it's expanded my company. And it's doing things now, like even over the course of the last week, that we haven't been doing probably ever. I'm offering new things to my clients that work in a digital environment, no matter if COVID is happening or not.
Right.
And I'm stronger too. I've been through like a furnace per se of having to rebuild from scratch with pressure. The rent company doesn't, they don't care if, that your little online business isn't doing what it used to do. No, but I built it again. And I don't want to like just take credit for that. Like, I believe, like, literally when I sleep at night, when I'm going to sleep, I'll be up on my phone, like, because I'll be having these ideas, these downloads from the Lord that I'll like write down and act upon the next day. But when those hard times come, something people mess up a lot is thinking that faith in God in those times is sitting on your butt and doing nothing and just saying, man, look at my situation. And if you're not careful, your words are going to start cursing your situation.
Right.
I'm never going to get out of this. This situation is awful. No, we're going to build something bigger. We're going to grow stronger from this. You got to put in more time, more effort, more energy, maybe have less sleep. But again, if you think somebody's coming, like, it may not happen.
Yeah.
And for my family, I'm not going to put my, it's my responsibility to provide. And so if I got to get on 100 phone calls and I got to build a new company and start I'll do that. And that's what we had to do.
Yeah, that's really good. And dude, because it's so crazy because I'm 21, living up, I'm at my mom's house. And you're like, you're 22, you're at a whole different chapter. Like, you're married. Like,
that happened fast though.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, just talk about just talk about that transition. Like, you graduated, you did schooling online and everything. and granted, like you and your wife look so beautiful. But
Thank
but
you.
like, man, talk about just that transition of, especially as like who you are, man, like just that relationship and being able to balance that, and like that, just in that growth, and like, yeah, you know what, I'm confident this is who God gave me.
Yeah. You
And
know, go ahead.
no, like, and yeah, just dive in.
It's funny. So my wife, we met in eighth grade, and we were at this etiquette. We had this etiquette class with our grade, and we all got randomly paired, a guy and a girl. And ironically enough, we got paired together,
Right.
and like had to go on this not date, but like it was as if it was a date and do the etiquette stuff, manners, all that sort of. And a couple of years later, we like got close and everything. We were always close, but went to two different parts of the world. I went to California for college. She went to Australia. And then on a random day in like the Dallas area, we crossed paths again. Um, and then I don't know, like a year and a half later, something like that, got married. um, but I say that to say that, you know, I'm grateful because even the hats thing we talked about with like, Kyle, what do you do? Because that is so, not everybody is comfortable marrying somebody who doesn't have a one little hat that like, you know, where every bill, everything, every dollar is coming in from. My wife, in marrying me, knew what she was signing up for, but she also married me because she knew, one of the reasons she knew that no matter what came up, no matter what challenge we went through, um, you know, I was gonna figure something out. Um, I was not just gonna let the situation get the best of us or anything like that. And so, um, we've been through a lot. She's seen me start things, build things. She's seen COVID happen and me have to start over, but she's never seen me throw in the towel.
Right.
And I think there's an even greater way after getting married of like having more responsibility. You're not, it's not parents paying for things. It's not this, that like, I also take on that and yeah, kind of just run with it. And I will do whatever it takes to provide for my family. Like, if we got to make 10 grand this week, then trust me, it'll happen.
Right.
If you got a medical bill, our first month of marriage, bro, we had COVID. I was in the hospital, had a flat tire. Our apartment flooded. This was all like in the course of a week.
Wait, and this was New York?
No, this was in Dallas.
Okay, Dallas.
So we were displaced. This was the course of a week. And there have been hard, challenging times, but she's never seen me throw in the towel, and she never will. And that is something I'm proud of.
That's awesome, bro. Like, just first off, thank you so much for that vulnerability, because and just with that, like, just being vulnerable as a human creates like, I guess, especially in terms of influencers, it's like, hey, all right, they're not this perfect being, especially in the digital space, and how you were able to like be vulnerable in that. So first of all, I just want to say thank you for that. And two, like, that's awesome. That is incredible that you guys are standing with each other, because yeah, just imagine like everybody that just graduated this past year, 2020, like class of 2020, like people's weddings were canceled. Like you guys were able to get the wedding just like that, but
People
it,
losing jobs, like
jeez,
even things that seem, like you said, that seem secure. Even things that seem secure, people lost.
right,
Like this thing affected a lot of people.
right, right. And I mean, of course, you being globally aware, I wanted to get your stance of just the recent, Black Lives Matter, you being a Black man in America, like, we're children of God, but I mean, of course, sometimes it's like, hey, people will always try to remind us of our Blackness no matter what. And so like, what are some of your thoughts, and like, how have you been able to break it down in a way that, this is how I'm going to confront this, and
Yeah.
and how am I going to continue to address it with a platform in a way that's going to be like, um, positive, and reinforcing like change rather than just the division.
Yeah, man, it's interesting because having some degree of influence, whatever you want to call it, there's like this pressure to like be on the front lines of speaking. And I
Right.
think there's like definitely, there's definitely room to speak and everything, but I think there also is this pressure to, while still processing like your own thoughts, like seeing a video, the many videos that we've seen, and not having the luxury as African Americans of just now, like I saw somebody put it like this, that a lot of people now, they're having the luxury of learning about racism, and that in itself is a privilege.
Right.
Whereas like in having to see in 2020 that this sort of stuff is happening, there was a lot of thoughts obviously to process. um, I think one of the things that God has blessed me with is my background, and that being that like my all my extended family, cousins, grandparents, mom is raised, parents are raised Chicago. So like that's where like we would go every year. That's where family is. But I grew up in South Lake, which is a predominantly white, like nice part of Dallas Fort Worth.
Hmm.
Um, so I've seen, my wife is white. So I see this on so many different sides of the equation. Um, and I've been really proud of a lot of the people, especially my Caucasian friends, who have not just reached out to me, but have been willing to have conversations. And I think that's a big part of what needs to happen. Like the amount of people who have thought and maybe still think that, oh, this stuff doesn't happen in 2020, racism, and but the it's taken such explicit things to happen for people to even realize that it still happens.
Right.
um, and so I've had the chance, like on a few different like podcasts, to talk about it and things like that. But also there's been a number of like relatively influential people that have reached out to me, like Caucasian people who have said, Kyle, like look, I'm having to address this because of my influence. Please help me process this thoughts, like from an African American perspective. And so maybe people haven't seen me as publicly, with everything from business to videos to everything, all over social media, but behind the scenes, um, the conversations that I've had have been touching thousands of people, and I believe making a difference. But the hardest thing was in the immediate, when it all happened or started to happen. You know what I'm talking about? The pressure to speak before I even could process my own thoughts.
Right.
Um, and so there's fear, there was anger, frustration, tiredness, because it's a real thing. But I can say that I've had the chance to be part of a lot of conversations that I think even tomorrow, actually, I'm going to wake up and be a part of prayer for a really, really big church. And we're just going to pray for unity and reconciliation and things like that. So,
Right. That's good. That's really good. And that's definitely very true in the terms of like everybody is so quick to speak and to defend. And it's just because we're just I really do feel like it's because of COVID, everybody's frustrations, everybody's our feelings are on the sleep, everybody is on edge. And just like, just to add in like any of the protest and yeah, that pressure to speak is very hard. But like, but what you're doing, like, and just the discipleship, like if you look at Jesus and how he was able to walk with everybody and everyone, um, and like how you're doing that, like behind the scenes, it doesn't need to be predicated or shown, but doing those intentional action is just it's so vital.
yeah, it's real, man. I mean, this is such a deep racism in America. Um, I'm just talking about America specifically, is like such a deeply rooted thing. Like we're talking about, for honestly, like a country that was built on it.
Right.
And then so you're trying to dig that up, and it's hard to do just on social media. I think social media has made such a big difference in so many amazing ways. I'm like so grateful for it. But it's going to, like, if it took X amount of years to build this thing to where it is, it's the process thing that we talked about at the beginning of this. We need people who are in it, not just while it's trending, um, not just while it's a hot topic, and while there's an expectation to post about it. but like we need to take on this thing and say, no, we're in this to see this eradicated.
Right.
Yeah.
That's awesome, bro. Now, I want to dive a little bit deeper into the social media, man. How you were able to flip it on its head, like amazingly. Because I remember, like, when reading your bio for your book, how you said you used to work at Foot Locker, and you used to get like what, $16 an hour.
Probably minimum wage before taxes.
Oh, dude, like I used to work at Converse, and I'm like, I'm not sure if you've seen this guy, John Henry Style. You know John Henry?
Yeah, I know who that is.
Yeah. So when you talked about, I was listening to one of his interviews with this guy, EYL, Earn Your Leisure, and how he's this guy. Oh, you listen to EYL?
Sure.
And
sorry,
it cut out.
Okay, it cut out. I can hear you now.
He's like, yeah, EYL, man, love that show.
Yeah.
Learned so much, but how he talked about like being capped. Like John Henry talked about being capped as a doorman, and the guy that put him on MC game, like Hugo, or sparked the interest, was like, dude, you're being capped. Like, talk about how you were able to, you know what, Foot Locker, goodbye. I'm doing my own thing, and really finding that value.
Man, it's funny. So at Foot Locker, we made minimum wage, then we made commission, but like I never sold enough to actually make any commission. I don't even know if I ever made commission. You had to like sell a certain amount, and then after that, and there were people who who I knew people there who loved working there, who wanted to make a career out of it. That's cool if that's your thing. I know people there who maybe didn't want to do that, but they crushed it on the sales floor, just like so nonchalantly. We're just selling. That wasn't really me, but like I remember one day I like had to ask off for a shift because I was going to be in a church that weekend preaching. And like the days before, I was like on the sales floor, like walking around while we didn't have customers, like going through my talks and going through my stuff. And it's what we were talking about a minute ago about how God calls those things which are not as though they already are. Even though I was literally had my little striped referee jersey on, working at Foot Locker, I was practicing and preparing for where I wanted to be. I was not letting giving my temporary situation, lifetime, or even long-term expectations. I knew when I got that job that I'm here for every time I got out the car for my shift, God, I'm here for a reason and a season. Show me what that is today. And there were people that I definitely got to like share Christ with, that I got to be an influence to, but I knew that was not for me long-term, like at all. I knew I was an entrepreneur. I didn't know how to package those things. And it's interesting because like, although as much as I like called myself an entrepreneur and did create things, I didn't always have like the business side of it, like the monetizing it down.
Right.
Especially when I started speaking. I was getting paid to speak when I started traveling to speak, but like it wasn't that, as many as invites would come in, I'd get paid for those. But there wasn't any system or structure, and there definitely wasn't anything that was like I had dollars coming in if I wasn't on the road speaking. And since then, I've really created many things. I actually call it like just like my wife and I, we play the game Monopoly, and my thing is like creating like a digital monopoly, just like all these different businesses and things that I've got ticking. And I've created stuff now to where I will never go back to Foot Locker to work.
Right.
And just continuing now to scale those things up. So horizontal scaling, I want to create different things, and then vertical scaling, I want to take those things higher. And that's what I'm doing now. But also like a theme in my story is every time I learn how to do something, I put people on game to do the same thing.
Right.
Like when I learned how to speak, or better yet, not just speak. A lot of people can speak. When I learned how to land speaking gigs routinely, I created a course, and we just passed 7,000 students. Same with the author thing. I don't promote it, but I have a business course that shows people the fundamentals of entrepreneurship and starting things digitally. So that's always been my thing. Like each one, teach one. Right. Once you do something, turn around and help kick down the door. And there is, of course, in a lot of things, there's a lot of times there's like the people who are more official in the industry, or who they're used to people having to come through a middleman to get to them, who like get upset when I kick down the door in certain industries and make it essentially easier for people to get in. They're
Right.
like, man, you're like quality, you're like letting all. No, I am here to kick down the door to give people opportunities to do the things that God has created, called, and crafted them to do.
Right.
And like, that's what I'm going to do, whether people like it or not. And every day I'm learning new things so that I can turn around and kick down the door. And if you help enough people get what they want, you will get whatever that is that you want.
Right.
Even if we're talking financially, if you help 1,000,000 people, 10,000, 1,000 people, and you set things up right, because people like should be paid for the services and products they provide,
Right.
you'll be all right. And some people try to chase money when they should be trying to chase helping more people. You
Right.
can serve more people with your product or service, you will be fine financially.
Yeah, and and that's what they said. Like each and every day, if you give a service, like it's all about. It's so funny. Now I'm just repeating what my marketing professor said. Shout out Dr. Swan, awesome first year professor,
Oh,
awesome
awesome.
guy. Eric Swan, man, such a great man. But he said like, yo, you need to be able to identify the needs and see how is that going to be valuable.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
most valuable asset is being able to teach somebody how to fish. Like, yeah, you can give them a fish, but then if they go for a day, but if you're able to teach them for a fish for a lifetime, like I was listening to Prince Donnell and Dana Chanel talking about that. Prince Donnell wrote a check for $1 million November 1st, 2019. And he said that he didn't know how it was going to happen, but he wrote that in 2013 when he was working at the bank. He met his wife, did all this, that. He was calling people, calling sales. So he was doing cold calls. After doing cold calls, he was able then to automize to make people partners in part of the business. Like, hey, you want to start your own tax business? Great. But through that, it's like, not only like, I'm not looking for the tax business for me. He was like, this is giving people free game of financial literacy, specifically, especially in the community that doesn't really necessarily know a lot or have a lot of that exposure. And that in itself, by being able to serve people, God blessed him tenfold. And then he like, boom, was able to get that $1 million check. But it's like, he completely forgot about that. He was just so fixated and honed in the process of being able to help other people. And that's where it just becomes more powerful. Because if you have a product and it's not really necessarily adding any value in your life, in their life, then there must be something might be a little bit wrong.
And it's going to be hard to sell. It is hard to sell something that people don't want or don't need. If you have something that people, they so want it and they so need it, that is a lot easier to sell. And a lot of times people, they sell what they like instead of what people want or people need. And you can do it. Like, you can create stuff that you like and that's cool and fly. But if you look at some of the, like, Amazon, Jeff Bezos is on track, I think, to become the first $1 trillion person. I've used Amazon in the last 24 hours. Like, most households have Amazon Prime. Everybody's using it, and that's why. And people still have the audacity to comment on posts that'll talk about his net worth and be like, this isn't fair, while they themselves were on Amazon the day before, right? And so it's like, it's so true. Add value, add value, add value. And if if your goal is to make $1 million or 100,000 or 50,000, whatever, try to match what you're making at your current job, just get a calculator out and do the math. What am I going to sell my product for? How many do I need to sell? And go from there.
Right.
And so that's how it works.
That's good. Now, I actually do have one question for you. I actually had a really good friend of mine ask me this. How much is an hour of your time? Like, and like, granted, like, okay, of course, everybody created is like, we're all priceless. We're all made in the image of God. We're infinite. We have so much potential in us. But I'm talking about in the sense of, you know what? If somebody was to ask you, hey, Kyle, man, I want to pick your brain. I want to sit down. I would like to sit down with you. How much would that be? In the sense of like, you're adding your skill set, your purpose, all that you've been through. Because he said like $50, and I'm like, $50? You could. Well, he said 50 at first, but then now he went to 100. He said, yeah, but now I'm worth 100. I feel like I'm 100. And I'm like, bro, that's basura. Like, no, you're way more valuable. Like, you're undervaluing yourself. But anyway, that's something I wanted to ask you. Like, how much would you say if there was a number?
Yeah, it's hard because I feel like one of my truly something that I've struggled with in business is I don't want to say giving too much away for free, but there's been a lot of times where I didn't value my time enough, even to where. So let me give you a great example. One of my first businesses was online businesses was an author program where, like, if you send in a manuscript, we did everything for you. So we would get it edited, formatted, cover art, published, everything. I was doing this by myself, and let's say each person paid $1,000, whatever, but it took months to get done, and it was time, it was stress, it was back and forth, all this stuff. Even if they had given me $10,000, it truly would not have been worth it. It
Right.
wasn't worth it time wise. Now I learned from it, we built upon it, stuff like that. So honestly, like, the way I set things up now, I try to set up most of my things where I'm really adding value in on-demand programs.
Right.
So that's why I have the speaking thing. So I'm not getting on 100 calls trying to help people like that. Because those things do well. Like, I do find myself, if somebody wants to get on a call, a lot of times I don't do that. But for a lot of people, especially if they've invested with me financially for something else, like they've invested in one of my programs, services, something like that, then I usually throw in a call like that in addition to that.
Right.
Now, a lot of my services, things that I sell, are $1,000. Are I've had people pay me much more than that, and then so with that, I'm happy to get on calls. Um, However, if I have a friend who's like, "Yo, can we get on a call and kick it?" I usually just do it, and I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but strangers, I haven't been doing that as much. Like, getting on calls, it's usually just offering my products and services, or getting on a call that leads to working together potentially in that paid product or service. If I did have a price on it, it would be like thousands of dollars, because
Yeah.
I know the value that I bring to an hour or to multiple hours. Like, I'm going to show you how to monetize what you're doing. Um, and so it really depends what it's about, but I tend to see the best value and not even getting on calls about, here's how to build a speaking program for yourself, but just building an online program that they can do at their own pace.
Right.
And that's just what I have found for me. Because as much as I do like coaching, online coaching, but I like building more. And that being building the program, building the systems, building the course, taking an idea and I would rather do that than all the implementation. That's
Right.
not really what I love the most, and so I will need to, like, hire out some of those positions. Um, but yeah, I know that was kind of all over the place, but that's how I typically do my stuff. If somebody invests with me in one of my higher ticket programs, then I usually get on a call with them to see how we can make sure that the implementation um, goes as well as possible.
Right. Right. Because, like, it's in the sense of the system that is built up, like, or like, I love that educational video about, like, the ACT, which, and now, now it's about to be gone, which is going to be completely, that's going to change the education system completely, entirely, especially with the new federal order, where it's like talking about executive order, pardon me, like, now they're going to value assets over skills, right? I mean, no, skills over a degree, right? So I was just thinking, I'm like, man, like, for a person of your skill set, it's just more of, most people don't really understand their value and their worth, and then so they fall in line to a system that determines it for them, and that, because, like, they believe in God, but they don't see the potential in themselves, because one of could maybe their environment, two, the lack of the self belief and the talk that's in their head, and yeah.
And it's interesting though, because, like, with the internet, and it is a self-belief thing. It is thinking that a lot of people that you do see on social media who have achieved some level of financial success through entrepreneurship, thinking that that's like that couldn't be me, an inability to see yourself in that person. Where in reality, like, if you actually know, you get some coaching, and this is what I believe. Like, as much as I have courses to sell and things like that to sell, I personally invest in other people's stuff. Because with the right information, you can turn virtually anything into six figures is like the first thing that pops into my head. But a full-time income, I think, is even better, a more attainable thing to say. Like,
Right.
if you want to make six figures, I think you got to make $277 a day. If you're selling a product for $50, you got to find a way to sell your $50 product 5 times a day. Like, I could show a person how to do that without ads, without anything like that. And if your product is higher, you may only have to sell one a day
Right.
to make 6 figures in a year.
Right.
And if you're trying to make less than that, just do the math. And so I think a lot of people, there has to be some jump. But once you see the Stripe account, PayPal account, you see the numbers tangibly. Not the Bible. I forgot who said this, but they said the mind of man, once stretched by a new idea, it never returns back to its original dimensions. So once you see it tangibly, it's hard to go back and say, you know what, I think I'm going to go back to that 9 to 5, back to whatever. And so that's really the value that I can bring to somebody on a call or in a program. It's like, look, I will show you how to take what you're doing and monetize it. Now, what you do with that is up to you, but your goal doesn't have to be to make 7 figures,
Right.
even 6. I think people throw out those numbers because they seem like the right answer. But if a person is making $40,000 at a job they hate, you can, I'll show you how to make that doing something you love.
Right.
And, some people will still think anything that seems too good to be true, which that is so attainable, but bigger than what they've seen, they think skepticism, scam, doesn't work. And I can't chase everybody down who thinks like that. I can hope that changes for them, but
Right.
the results just speak. And I hope that people catch on to this stuff, because it's amazing what you can do literally from this phone.
Yo, yes.
It has more technology than people sent the first guy to the moon with. So
best time to be alive. My last question, man. My last question for you is, what do you want your legacy to be?
Man, I hope people look at my life and just say, this is a person who, dominated in all the different arenas that he was in. But the difference between him and a lot of people is that unapologetically, he pointed people to Christ. That when people saw him, they saw Christ. Personally, I feel like if I build the biggest building and it's only for me, then I die, then it's like I die with it.
Right.
But I think God has blessed me and he'll continue to do so. And I just want to steward that well. I'm not trying to be the richest in the world. I'm not trying to be the most popular. I'm just trying to do everything that he places in my heart to do. And it's been working, and that's just what I want to continue to do. And I pray that what I'm known for, my legacy, is that people saw that it's possible to do things at the highest level while unapologetically being a light for Christ.
That's incredible. Last segment, man. This is my Speak Life segment, where I just take a moment and chance to speak life over the guest. Dude, you're wild, bro. You're wild.
Appreciate that, dog.
No, dude, just thank you for you could have easily just withheld this information for your own and just gone out of your day. But again, Christ moving in you and through you is just even more proof of the reason why you have the success today is more prominent and more truthful. It's just amazing. So just your ability to continue to lead, to speak truth, to speak power, but also to lead and walk in humility is definitely inspiring, bro. Thank you, man. Just know that the people around you do care, and you have, and of course, you have inspired me, man, so much. And I just want to say I'm so grateful for all that you've done, and it's nothing but love from my end. And I hope that you have your flowers, because what you're doing is very important and you're changing lives.
Man, I really received that and appreciate it, man. It's an honor to know you and yeah, to just continue this friendship, bro.
Yeah. But that's it, everybody, for this episode. Tap in. We out.